Welcome to Good Game, I'm Hex.
And I'm Bajo.
Tonight we brace ourselves for battle because we've got warring factions all over the shop, Bajo.
That's right, Hex, it's strategy overload, and first we face death and destiny with Fire Emblem Fates.
And then it'll be time to meet the might of the greenskins in Total War Warhammer.
Two epic strategy games this week, and if you're not a fan of the strategy genre, now is the perfect time to jump in my opinion.
Speaking of IMOs, Goose will be along with one tonight on video game films. Always a touchy subject, isn't it?
Indeed. Also, NichBoy will have a first play for us, and it's the Xbox indie title TurnOn. Big show.
But first, can you name the game for this week?
You there! Show yourself!
Fire Emblem Fates came out last year in Japan, but it's finally had a Western release. For those not familiar with the series, Fire Emblem will look like a weird, simple strategy game, and they might not get why fans are so rabidly obsessed with it. But mention to a fan that there's a new Fire Emblem game and you will start to see the froth form around their mouth.
That's right, this series has some of the best turn-based action around, and Fates is no exception. There's also an epic story.
There's a few ways to play a Fire Emblem game, but really it's all about that hardcore classic mode. This will make you weep into the touchscreen of your 3DS as you permanently lose your best soldiers to silly mistakes.
Well, let's go over the setup, Bajo, because that first hour is pretty crazy. The game begins in a battle between two warring kingdoms.
And then you flash back in time, and 10 minutes in, bam, amnesia storyline.
Hey, wake up! Classic JRPG. At least they don't harp on about the lost memory stuff too much.
True.
Things get pretty hectic from there, and this is a teensy tiny bit spoilery, but we kind of have to talk about the opening chapter because it sets up the entire branching story.
Yes, and also because it's insane, mostly in a good way.
First of all, you've been kind of imprisoned by your creepy father, the king, and you have to fight to prove that you can go out and see the world. You then learn that you're the descendant of some ancient dragon gods, which is kind of a lot to take in.
Creepy King then demands you fight your brother and also murder some prisoners. You defy him, and then are punished by being sent on a mission to check out a fortress with old mate Codpiece Hans. Wow. You are betrayed, someone tries to assassinate you, you grow some weird antlers, a magic sword tries to kill you, kind of. A nurse who is actually a bird that is actually a dragon that you rescued as a child saves you. You're then transported to another astral plane. Oh, and you flirt with your sister.
Yes.
You tend to flirt with everyone, actually. And who knows if these people are blood related, but either way, there's incest themes.
Yeah, and that's just the first hour. There's so much drama in these little animations. And there is a lot of dialogue, but I was on board with all of this. I mean, not the incest, but you know. Once you play the first couple of hours, you reach the point of that original first battle, and this is where Fire Emblem Fates becomes 3 different campaigns. You can choose to side with Hoshido, which is called Birthright, or the creepy King Army Nor, which is called Conquest, or play the DLC, which is called Revelation.
Yeah, so Conquest and Birthright are sold as 2 separate retail boxes, but you can go online and buy the campaign that you don't own along with the DLC.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing and a strange way to go because they're essentially releasing 3 different games that branch into separate storylines.
Yeah, and at first I thought that was a bit cheeky, you know, having these separate games, but then I realized these campaigns are all different, which means it's just more Fire Emblem. The biggest difference between Birthright and Conquest is difficulty and blood versus upbringing. Birthright is the easier game, and you probably won't start losing units until hour 7 or 8. Conquest is a darker story where you side with Creepy King, and that's brutal. Hex, I've played my fair share of Fire Emblem, but within a few turns of Conquest, I was stressed out to the max.
Yeah, it's savage. In Conquest, you can't do challenge maps, which means you can't grind out levels for your units. So choosing who to level up really matters.
Yeah, I don't think you'd want to play Conquest in classic mode unless you really want to feel pain, because I lost a unit on my second turn.
Don't forget me.
And word is that the Revelation DLC is actually better than both Conquest and Birthright, because it's got the difficulty of Conquest, but you can also grind out levels like in Birthright.
Yeah, we haven't spent as much time in Conquest or Revelation because it's recommended that you play them after you've cut your teeth in Birthright. And these are big games.
Yeah, they're great looking games now too. There's more use of 3D in the maps, and I love the little snippets of audio that help punctuate the scenes.
Everything's okay.
I stuck to classic mode, Hex, because I love that threat of losing units, but I am also willing to soft reset the game to try and save them.
Are you willing to live with the shame though, Bajo?
Yes.
Combat relies heavily on ambushing enemies and not getting ambushed yourself, especially when you have low levels in the field who need to stay back and help out when they can. Putting units side by side will give them an attack bonus and can often mean the end of an enemy before they can cause too much trouble. You can also pair up units for more defense, and there's some good red exclamation mark indicators for when attacking is a really, really bad idea.
There's some fun, unique units too, such as Azura, who can sing to give a unit another turn. It's totally OP and amazing. This time around, if you want to promote units or reclass them, you need to use rare seals. That's how I got this crazy robot dog archer guy. He's my favorite.
That was a good fight.
Seals are a lot rarer in Conquest mode, and there's so many different types now. I also like how cool the units looked after you do a seal upgrade. We should also mention that this Fire Emblem has a fortress that you can build called My Castle.
Yeah, there's gear vendors, blacksmithing, a lottery, food which gives your units bonuses, a sauna, and of course your personal quarters for all that flirting and potential incest.
I get why those personal quarters are there, to help build the relationships between characters, and then that carries over into the combat, but it is particularly creepy if you're playing the non-Western Japanese version. In the Japanese version, you're also encouraged to poke their faces at the same time with the stylus in a weird petting minigame. This has been removed for the Western release, however you still can scroll down to look at their chest.
Come on, guys.
So weird.
How nice to spend this time with you.
You can also upload your castle online, or visit other people's uploaded fortresses and get some free food, or choose to fight NPCs in their arenas. There's also online multiplayer versus battles, and you can choose to fight in your own castle, which gives you some advantages.
That advantage did not help us.
Such a nuisance.
I did it!
Wrecked.
So wrecked. It's nice to have a fortress to call home, but some parts of it felt a bit pointless, just busy work and not actual fun.
I liked all the relationship building conversations you can have in the castle, and there are some funny little interactions there. Yeah, the more I think about it, Bajo, the more I like that there are two main versions of this game. I mean, I think the difficulty difference will please fans, but mostly I just think it's so cool that you get to play out the other side of the fight and experience both sides of the battle.
Yeah, it's a really interesting approach, and it is genuinely emotional when you stop playing Birthright and start playing Conquest and mercilessly slaughter those you fought so hard to care for. What are you going to give it, Hex?
I'm giving this 4 stars.
4.5 from me.
This week, I want to talk about the latest trend in Hollywood, video game movies. Well, to be fair, this isn't exactly a new trend. Flicks based on video games have been around for decades now. But let's be honest, they've all been terrible. Not just some, all of them. Seriously, name me one good video game movie. It's cool, I'll wait. Here's some music to help you think. At best, you could argue they're so bad they're good, but that doesn't undo the damage they've done over the past 23 years. It's no secret that Hollywood has all but run out of original ideas, so of course video games, like comic books, are ripe for the picking with their juicy pre-built worlds, pre-written stories, and the most important part, a pre-established fan base with wallets ready to be emptied. Which, I'm sorry to say, is us. But lately things are getting out of control, with studios snapping up licenses to frankly ridiculous franchises. I mean, do you really need the Asteroids franchise to make a flick about asteroids? Or what about Tetris? Yes, that's right, Threshold Entertainment just announced their intention to make a trilogy of films based on the 1984 block-sorting puzzle classic, Tetris. What the f***? In my opinion, we have to stop supporting these terrible cash-ins, and we need to do it now. What started out as a bit of silly fun way back in '93 has developed into a full-blown punchline of modern-day cinema. And at some point, their continued terribleness is going to come crashing down around us. Like E.T. the video game crippling the gaming industry, Tetris the sci-fi thriller trilogy might just be the tipping point that destroys what remaining interest the public has in the medium altogether. The harsh truth is that video games and movies were never a good mix from the start. Each has their own unique entertainment quality that's directly cancelled out when you merge them. Movies based on games attempt to either condense hours of complex narrative into a single viewing experience, or worse, they create story where there is none, all while removing the core gameplay that made the thing fun in the first place. But the fact of the matter is, these films do bring in a lot of money, regardless of their quality. Even the so-called Pixar of video games, Nintendo, has plans to bring their franchises to the silver screen. And considering it was Nintendo who got this whole shitstorm started in the first place, it only seems fair that they're the ones to try and clean it up.
Super Mario Brothers. This ain't no game.
But even if they could bring some of their Disney-esque charm and magic to the table, I doubt it's going to be the Citizen Kane of video game films. More likely, they'll just flood our shelves with straight-to-DVD releases, each bundled with an amiibo of a Nintendo exec that's rolling in a pile of money. Which really is a shame, because as gamers, we want these movies to work. We buy tickets to each ridiculous release hoping that this might be the film to get it right. This will be the one that shows the rest of the world what they've been missing out on all of this time. But when the credits roll and the lights come up, all we're left with is a dull feeling of shame and, let's face it, embarrassment. Because we know we just sat through a watered-down, 2-hour cutscene that bastardized a beloved gaming experience, and we paid to do it. In 3D. Yet, it seems like we just can't help ourselves. We continue to support the machine that's been cannibalizing some of our greatest interactive stories ever told, like Warcraft, Assassin's Creed, Portal, and God forbid, Uncharted, which is already like a film, but it's better, so just stop. Oh, what's that? You were just curious to see how they could make a movie about Tetris? Well done. You've just put another nail in the coffin and proven to studios that we're willing to pay to watch this crap. It's time we just let these uninspired, embarrassing blights on our favorite pastime flop, both critically and financially.
You're alive. Too bad. You will die.
So when they announce an animated Crossy Roads movie, we need to say no. When we see a trailer for Candy Crush, the romantic thriller starring Justin Timberlake and Kristen Bell, we will say not this time. When Hollywood thinks it would be a good idea to make a Fruit Ninja movie, we will stand together and... What? They are making that. Oh, shit. Well, that's just my opinion. Do you genuinely enjoy video game flicks? Like, do you actually enjoy them? Or do you think we need to cut the head off the beast and keep our games off the big screen? As usual, let us know on social media, and I'll be discussing it further on our online show Pocket with NichBoy tomorrow.
Thanks, Goose. I think there's still totally a place for video game movies. They've just got to get one right. And I am cautiously optimistic about the Assassin's Creed movie.
I am certain it's going to be awful.
It won't.
Of course it will be. They're all awful. The only one that was half decent was the Prince of Persia movie.
No, it wasn't.
It was great. It rocked along. It was pretty good.
No, Assassin's Creed's gonna be way better than that. Fassbender's way better than Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, well, yeah, he is off-putting. Now here's NichBoy with the first play.
TurnOn is a new adventure game from Brainy Studio, which comes out on the 1st of June for Xbox One and PC. In it, you play as a small ball of light trying to restore power to a blacked out city. Now, the game pitches itself in its trailer as like a charming platformer, but it is called TurnOn, so I'll be the judge of that. This bearded, handsome man is quite attractive. It's kind of weird how much this game is like my life right now. Bearded man with glasses sitting at a computer while someone stares at him off screen creepily. Ah, water and electricity. That seems like a good message to be sending. I'm guessing red electricity is bad? Are there bad kinds of electricity? It's a house party. Those guys are doing exactly the same dance moves, and it's really weirding me out. I love that they just stood there in the dark waiting to play basketball. The lights came back on. We're on. Okay, so that is Turn On. And I gotta start by saying I'm not. Although I do really like the art style of the game. I think it's got a very unique look and it sort of continues that throughout what I've played so far. Kind of reminds me of a 90s cartoon. Feels like the kind of place that the Rugrats lived. I also like the fact that it's got this sub-layer of social commentary on it, which maybe I'm reading too much into, but pretty much every human being in the game cannot function without electricity. From showers to televisions, it's kind of like going, are we reliant too much on that? But I feel like the game never comes together to be anything more than functional. All the parts are there. You've got a nice looking art style and the music's nice and the gameplay technically is platforming, where it's almost like they've taken a platformer and they've removed the art from the front of it. So if you played Rayman or Mario or Ori and the Blind Forest, if you removed all of the art, then it would just be a series of lines that the character could jump onto different lines. And that's what the core mechanic of this game is. You're jumping from line to line. There's no way you can go other than the completely predetermined paths that the developers have put in there. So there's a sense of discovery and exploration, which I really like in platformers, that gets removed here. Even when I'm moving forward, I'm seeing more areas of the city, but it was sort of rarely introducing new mechanics. There was this bonus level that happened between the tutorial and the first world, and that's where I'm zipping across the power lines across the water. That to me felt like the best part of the game, funnily enough, because it ramped up in difficulty as I collected more things. There was a sense of choice that I needed to make where it got to, there were 5 levels of electricity wise that I could hit, dodge the red things, collect the green things. That actually felt like, you know, for lack of a better word, I guess, a video game. And then I get to these parts which are meditative, which is nice, but they were probably even a bit too slow for me. I think the real problem here is there's no drive forward in the game and nothing is pushing me to see what happens next. Even when I'm in these levels, there's the sense that I'm not quite sure why or what I'm doing to finish the level. There was one where I jumped on the back of a van with a lightning bolt on it, and then I needed to light up a bunch of stuff in the neighborhood. And then when I got to the end, that van wasn't there for me to jump onto and move on. So then I had to go back through the level multiple times, triggering different things, and then eventually the van turned up, but I was like, I don't know what I did. I don't know which one of those things actually made the van appear. And the same thing happens with the boss battle, where I start the boss battle, and it's not difficult, it's just this slow, tedious slog of doing the same repetitive motion until eventually I wear it down. It worked! Ah! So that was my first play of Turn On. Will there be a second play? No. Turn off.
Thanks, Nick. The Total War series has finally freed itself from its historical shackles and teamed up with the behemoth fantasy franchise that is Warhammer. That is 2 types of war in one.
But is it a match made in heaven like peanut butter and chocolate? Or is it an abomination like oysters and ice cream? Whatever it is, this is Total War Warhammer.
The Total War series has always prided itself on being historically nerdy and accurate, embracing parts of history that most other games ignore.
But over the past few installments, no matter which time period it's gone to, the traditional mix of swordsmen, spearmen, artillery and cavalry, while enjoyable, has started to feel a bit samey to us.
Yeah, so I was excited to jump into this fantasy realm. It just seemed to be exactly what the Total War franchise needed, a new lease on life.
And I'm glad to say, it has done exactly that.
Oh man, the first time you see a giant spider smash into your neat little formations and send your men flying. Or you see a single guy riding a griffin demolish a whole unit single-handedly. you realize you're going to need to reevaluate some of those long-held Total War strategies you rely on.
Yeah, there are some big changes to the formula going on here. Let's dive right in and talk about the campaign. So from the outset, we could play as the Empire, Orcs, Dwarfs, or the Undead. The Bretons are around, but they're not playable in the campaign.
You can play as Chaos with some DLC you get for free if you pre-order the game or buy it in the first week, but that wasn't unlocked as an option when we reviewed this.
The traditional Total War campaign map now covers the Warhammer fantasy realms, and campaigns still follow a pretty traditional formula where you'll need to capture or control a certain amount of territories, then just tick a few other win conditions and you can claim victory.
But within that, almost everything else is just a bit different, or a lot different in some cases. It's almost difficult to know where to start with all the changes they've made.
Yeah, well, let's start with the big ones. So in previous Total War games, I always felt like most factions played more or less the same way. But here, while there are fewer playable factions than usual, I loved how each one was much more specialized, with their own particular quirks and mechanics to take into account. Not to mention their vastly different rosters of unique units.
So the Orcs, for example, have armies that have a fightiness rating. If they don't fight much, they get restless and start fighting amongst themselves. But if they fight a lot, they start a wah, which spawns an extra army to fight alongside them.
The Dwarfs have a book of grudges, so when they lose battles or territory, it goes into the book and you'll basically get a little quest you have to carry out to remove the grudge.
No transgression should remain unpunished, my king.
If you let too many grudges pile up, then you'll be hit with more and more penalties.
And I also loved how settlements on the map are split up into two types. There are some on the plains that humans and vampires can inhabit, and then there's those in the mountains and wastes that only dwarves and orcs can live in. It just adds an interesting new wrinkle to how you plan your overall strategy, because you have to consider trying to find more diplomatic ways to control regions you can't occupy, that or just raiding them and razing them to the ground.
Speaking of which, diplomacy plays a much bigger role in this than I remember from the other games. Factions were just really proactive, constantly making pacts with me and pushing for me to join wars or stop wars.
Yeah, it seems like a much more viable way to actually grow your empire. I managed to pretty much take control of entire swathes of countryside just by asking nicely.
By Sigmar's will, come in peace. Welcome, my countrymen.
Please is the magic word, as they say. Speaking of magic, there's magic now. Some of your lords have magic abilities, and there are also various wizards and spellcasters you can bring into battle, and each have a set of unique spells you can unlock as they gain experience. These range from buffing your units or debuffing your enemies, or ones that can call down powerful attacks.
I think magic is something that could have been quite overpowered, but it's really quite restrained, and I actually think players will need a bit of practice to get the most out of it.
Yeah, so basically across the campaign map there's a thing called the Winds of Magic, and that determines how much magical power is available in battles. But even when there's quite a lot of wind, you'll only have enough reserves to cast a few handfuls of spells during a fight, and maybe 2 or 3 at any one time before you'll need to wait for your reserves to refill. So you have to be clever about it and use them sparingly.
Yeah, and it's also just one more thing you have to juggle in the midst of battle. And battles are more hectic and scrappy than ever before, so finding the right time to find your wizard, position him, and cast an effective spell can all be a bit much.
The AI is in top form. Even on normal difficulty, it's relentless. Your flanks and rear are almost always under siege from cavalry or flying units, and they won't ever sit back and let you bombard them with artillery. They get in your face and do not let up. Hex, in this game, I had some of the most intense Total War battles I have ever had.
Yeah, definitely. I found it much harder to pull off some of those underdog victories. I mean, even just managing a victory from an outmatched foe rarely felt like a sure thing. It can just be so easy to get distracted by one part of the battlefield, only to realize some hero unit has just torn through your lines somewhere else.
And speaking of heroes and lords, they've been fleshed out a lot more this time around. Like in the last few Total War games, you'll need to raise a lord to lead your armies.
Yes, but each faction also has 2 legendary lords, which are major characters in that faction. The Empire has Emperor Karl Franz and Balthazar Gelt, for example. These guys can never be killed in battle, only wounded, so you'll have access to them throughout the campaign, and by endgame they'll be super units.
My rule is absolute.
And not only are they strong units, but as they level up, they'll gain access to special multi-part missions. These involve ticking off a series of objectives and culminate in a special battle. Win that, and you get yourself a sweet bit of gear.
I did like the focus on getting gear and leveling your characters. It just made me so much more invested in them, and likewise devastated when I lost a strong hero too.
Yeah, I think one thing they've nailed overall is the balance. Even with the introduction of giant units, flying units, magic, and vastly different races, everything still has a counter. And that's no small achievement.
Yeah, it's impressive how they've balanced those super units so that they feel and look imposing and overpowered like they should, but they still don't break the game.
Sigma, preserve us!
They had a great layer of spectacle and stress to battles too, and they helped to bring a unique flavor to each of the factions.
One thing I noticed that I am not sad about is that there's no more naval combat. All those battles just auto-resolve now, just like the good old days.
Yeah, they've never been a strong point, have they? Just wrangling those slow ships has never held up to the thrilling on-land battles in the series.
It's nice, I feel like they're listening to their fans. Technically, the game runs quite well, and I think it's quite a good-looking game. I didn't really find any bugs, except one. And it was a fairly game-breaking one, too. Basically, I was having a great time leading the Empire to victory.
Fight, men! Fight for our right to live!
And about 100 turns in, the Chaos Lord Archaon rocks up and started sending Chaos Hordes into the land. So I had to defeat him to win the campaign, but when I got to the Chaos Wastes, he wasn't there.
Now, is it time? Onwards!
Nicked off! AFK! Gone to pot! So my grandma would always say, "You've gone to pot!" Never really understood what it meant.
Bring me to my men. Let's go.
Well, we were playing pre-release code and there was a patch, so maybe that's something that got fixed for release.
Yeah, I hope so. It was a pretty anticlimactic end to my reign.
Well, I mean, he was gone. You know, technically that's a victory, isn't it? You just scared him off.
It's a technical win. How exciting. Overall, though, I had such a good time with this game, and I can't wait to go back and try again with another race. I think we say this every time there's a Total War game, Hex, but I think this is the best Total War game yet. Yeah, I'm giving it 4.5 stars.
Yeah, and in true fantasy fashion, I think this is just the first game in a planned trilogy, so hopefully they start bringing in some of those remaining factions and fleshing this out. They're definitely onto a winning formula, though. I'm giving it 4.5 as well. So, did you name the game for this week? It was Metal Combat Falcon's Revenge on the Super Nintendo. This light gun shooter required the Super Scope peripherals that you could blast away at a plethora of robotic enemies on the screen, accompanied by a rather funky little 16-bit soundtrack too. And it was named the game because it was developed by Intelligent Systems, the same team behind this week's Fire Emblem Fates.
Next week on the show, we join an international task force of soldiers, scientists, adventurers, and oddities in Overwatch.
You don't get off that easy.
Plus, Turtle Power. We go on a romp with the mutants in Manhattan.
The good news is the bar was set pretty low with the last Ninja Turtles game, so I'm excited to see what Platinum Games do with it.
Well, they did alright with Transformers, so here's hoping. Don't forget you can catch more NichBoy on Good Game Pocket every day of the working week.
Did I hit him and I just set him on some sort of physics loop? And the box is floating!
And you can catch that on iView and YouTube.
Until next week, Bajo out.
Hex out.
I went and watched the original Mortal Kombat movie the other day because I had great memories of it as a kid, being the best movie ever, and it does not hold up.
Yeah, I've never seen Mortal Kombat, but I have seen Street Fighter, the one with Van Damme and Kylie Minogue.
Yeah, awful. Oh, why Kylie? Why?
No, you can't make fun of Kylie Minogue. She's an Australian princess.
You're right, she's Aussie royalty.
Yeah.
I take it back. You did a good job in that movie, Kylie.